I've always wanted to be a police officer since I was little, but I never really understood exactly everything that the job entails. And I don't think many people actually do understand what the full job entails. Most of what people think is, yeah, they just get the bad guys. But I really wanted to take a look into what a police officer's life is like and the different kind of police officers. In this documentary, you will see a community resource officer for the Needham High School and a retired NYPD officer who was on the job for almost 26 years. So we do have that variety here, and I think it's really awesome to see the difference between what the media shows you and what you'll see right now.
Hi, I'm RJ Poirier. I'm the school resource officer for the Needham Police Department. This is Rocket, Officer Rocket, and he's the newest member of the Needham Police Department, and he's our community resource dog.
What does being a police officer mean to you?
Being a police officer means serving my community, serving Needham, and doing my part to make sure that Needham's a safe community and everybody within the community feels welcome.
Why did you decide to become a police officer?
I decided to become a police officer to help people. I previously served in the Marine Corps, and I like service. I like serving my community, so it was a good fit for me.
What is your favorite thing about the job?
My favorite thing about the job is definitely meeting people, meeting new people, interacting with people. I'm a people person, and it's a fun part of the job.
What is your least favorite thing about the job?
I don't really dislike too many things about being a police officer. I think sometimes the schedule can be tough sometimes, but generally I love what I do.
What kind of sacrifices did you make when you became a police officer?
I'd say, in regards to the schedule, sometimes, when you become a police officer, you have to accept that you might be working on holidays, you might miss certain, family events, things like that. Looking back over the years that I've worked, I've missed some things, but nothing that's been too bad. It's still been worth it.
How has being a police officer affected you mentally?
I'd say overall, it hasn't affected me in any sort of negative way. I think, when you're a police officer, you definitely are put in situations where you're helping people who might be going through a crisis. You sometimes have to respond to scenes that aren't so pleasant, and obviously you take that in as a police officer, and you share sometimes the emotions of other people that are going through those tough times. So mentally, there is sort of probably a challenge that comes with it that doesn't come with a lot of other jobs, but all in all, it's still a very rewarding job.
How are you treated differently when you're wearing a uniform versus when you aren't wearing a uniform?
So in my role as a school resource officer, I typically actually don't wear my police uniform around the schools. I'm typically dressed just the way you see I am today. But with that said, sometimes I do wear it, and then if I happen to be working a patrol shift around the community in a marked police car, I would definitely have my uniform on. I'd say that I don't really see too much of a difference. Obviously, we want police officers to be in uniform so they can be identifiable in a crowd if somebody needs to find them for help. But I found that if you treat people respectfully and with kindness, that regardless of what you're wearing, it's really not going to make a difference. You're still going to be treated the same way.
When did Officer Rocket join the police department?
So Officer Rocket here joins in February of last year, and we got him. Our chief, Chief Schlittler, saw this great opportunity to get a community resource dog and jumped at the chance. The dog was given to us through a grant that was applied through the Norfolk District Attorney's Office, and yeah, we love having him on the job. He's awesome.
Can you explain some of the training he has gone through?
So we got Rocket back in February of this year, and I'd say, started almost immediately in training. March timeframe, he was going 5, sometimes 6 days a week to training. And then COVID happened, and his training got interrupted, which it created a challenge. But he comes from an organization in Walpole, Massachusetts called Golden Opportunities for Independence, and they're phenomenal. They do such great work, and during that time that the training was interrupted, it was great. We were doing Zoom meetings, and they were training me on how to train the dog. So Rocket and I picked up sort of the slack and did a lot of the work ourselves outside of bringing him there, and it went pretty well. And then he got back into training in early July. And those days that he goes to training, again, I mentioned he started 5 to 6 days. They've slowly, weaned down to 4 to 5, 3, 2. Currently, he goes 2 to 3 times a week. Yeah, he's done a great job. He just passed a major test, and he's got a couple more to go, but he's on his way.
What's Officer Rocket's role, and do you feel he's done a good job so far?
He's done an excellent job so far. We're really pleased with the value he's provided to the community in the short time that he's been here. So his role, he's a community resource dog for the police department, and his role is really to be a comfort dog for the community. He's primarily assigned to the schools with me. So I think most of the students within the district have already seen him in most of their classrooms. We try to get around as often as possible, and as he moves and graduates training, he'll be much more visible. Sometimes he's just not here because he's at training. Outside of the schools, he's a resource for calls that we might go to where somebody's experiencing a mental health crisis and might need Rocket for some comfort and support, or maybe a victim of a crime that needs Rocket for the same reasons, for comfort and support. He's outside of the school. He's already been on a couple calls, even though he's still in training, and he's proved to be very, very good. Yeah, I think it's going to be a lot of good things for Rocket and Needham. It's a good fit.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
My name's Christopher Porcu. I am actually retired from the New York City Police Department right now. I was hired January 9th, 1986, which is amazing to me because next week it's going to be 35 years when I was hired, and it just doesn't seem possible, especially since I'm only 35 years old. I retired June 30th, 2011, to be honest with you. So it's 9.5 years now that I'm retired. I did 25.5 years, and I'm retired 9.5 years. Obviously, when I was hired in the rank of police officer. That's the entry-level position. Over the course of my career, I served a lot of time in the narcotics division, and in fact, I earned my detective shield while working in the narcotics division. Then I got promoted to sergeant. you go back in uniform when you first get promoted. And then I went back to the narcotics division as a supervisor. From there, I went on to the detective bureau and I supervised the detective squad. And I finished up my career in the firearms division, working with debrief. The detectives that worked underneath me in this unit would debrief prisoners that were arrested for possession of firearms, and we would try and gather information and intelligence in that way. And that, in a nutshell, is what my 25 and a half years was.
Awesome. All right, so we'll jump right into the questions now. Why did you decide to become a police officer?
Well, I was always very intrigued with the law. I thought about going to law school. Also, when I was your age, I was intrigued in the military, and I thought about going in the military. Didn't know which direction I was going to go. Over the course of time, I kind of realized, the police department being a paramilitary organization and dealing with the law, I kind of felt like I would have the best of both worlds. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of how I got drawn to being into the police department.
What was your favorite thing about the job?
Favorite thing about the job? Well, the camaraderie. Not very many jobs are you put in a position where, you rely tremendously on your coworkers, your partner, or, the other people that you're working with. Obviously, military, fire, other first responders, those type of jobs are all the type of jobs where you're kind of putting your life in your partner's hand and your partner's putting his life in your hand. And that comes with a very special camaraderie that is non-existent in other jobs.
Okay. What was your least favorite thing about the job?
Well, it's the type of job where the public is always going to scrutinize you. You see that today.
Yeah.
See it totally. And it's been very, very interesting. As I stated before, I got hired in 1986. So over the course of 35 years, with the first 25 years being when I was an active police officer, and the last 10 years, which obviously I don't have that firsthand experience because I'm not physically doing the job currently, but I see the way you see and the way everybody else sees what's in the news and, the way the public treats the police now. It's very disheartening as far as that is concerned. And, it's the type of job where you have to make a split-second decision, literally a life and death split-second decision that's going to change your life or your partner's life or the person who you're interacting with, their life. Mm-hmm. And you have to make that decision immediately. And then the best legal minds in the country are going to Monday morning quarterback you and decide whether or not you did the right thing. And people who have absolutely no training and no clue on how to do the job think that they have a right to question how you did it. Now, don't get me wrong when I say that they don't have a right to the way their cities are policed, of course, but that comes with, getting involved and, getting trained and maybe riding in a police car, they have ride-alongs or going through training seminars that they have. If you're one of your loved ones had an operation, you would never in a million years think to question the doctor on how he is going to perform that operation.
What was the most memorable thing that has happened to you on the job?
Okay, so obviously, when you're talking about a career that spans 25 plus years, the most memorable things are going to be the things, of, high importance, high emotion, and obviously 9/11 is the defining moment of my career. anybody from my generation, 9/11 was the defining moment of our career.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this is just something that was unfathomable. You've grown up in a very different America than the America that I grew up in. When I was your age, this was not something that I would ever have dreamed would have or could have been a reality. Unfortunately, this has been your upbringing, and this is, it's very, very sad, to be honest with you.
Mm-hmm.
But 9/11 would definitely be the defining moment of my career for obvious reasons. I was working that day, so I'll just kind of give a real quick rundown. So the city of New York is made up of 5 boroughs: Manhattan, the Bronx, Queens, Brooklyn, Staten Island. Obviously, the World Trade Center was in Manhattan, and I live. And at that time, on that day, I was working in the borough of Staten Island. So when the first plane struck, I was working on Staten Island, and nobody really knew what happened when the first plane struck. So when the first plane struck, was it an accident? Was it a small Cessna? Whatever it was, it was at that point. But we still knew. When I say we, I mean, the people in my office at that time. I was a sergeant in the narcotics division. And we know when something like that, a true emergency in the city happens, that we're going to be mobilized and we're going to have to go and respond, or whatever our narcotics duties would have been put on hold, and we're going to be extra manpower that's going to be put to use. So, and then obviously, lo and behold, the second plane was struck. We knew it wasn't an accident.
Mm-hmm.
Quite frankly, we knew war was declared on America. And we responded from Staten Island to Manhattan for the day. I mean, I can go on with that. I don't want to chew up 45 minutes of the tape just talking about that.
Mm-hmm.
But that is also something that lasted, because there was a rescue and a recovery operation that lasted. So we were there every single day, week after week, month after month. Like I said, first, as part of a rescue operation, to see if anybody would be rescued. And then obviously there comes a point in time when that there's nobody that could have survived after, 10 days, 12 days, 15 days, whatever, that magic number is. And now it's, a recovery and, cleanup effort and perimeter security for police. And, again, I can go on and on and on with all the different, duties that we were tasked with. But so 9/11 would most certainly be the most defining moment of my career. And sadly, I can reach out and talk about other dates and circumstances where friends of mine and colleagues of mine, for various reasons, died in the line of duty. And, quite frankly, that is sad, and that becomes the big moments that you're going to remember.
Mm-hmm.
But that's just the reality.
How has being a police officer affected you mentally?
Ooh, good question. Well, it definitely changes you, because you always, got your guard up. You always are waiting for the other shoe to drop. You look at people differently when you're, in a store, when you're in a bank, when you're walking down the street, you're waiting for the subway. You look at people differently.
Were you treated differently when you were wearing a uniform versus when you weren't wearing a uniform?
Yes and no. And sometimes for the better and sometimes for the worse. I'll never forget. I actually love telling this story. There was a point in my career when I was a sergeant and I was supervising police officers working amongst in the housing developments, public housing. And on this one particular day, I must have come across, a dozen people, not the higher end of society that I spoke about before, the good people,
Mm-hmm.
the predators, even, and now they see you in uniform, and, now it's almost a confrontational thing, even if words are not spoken or you don't even interact with them, just the way they look at you, and, the way things are. And I'll never forget this day. I was very, very taken aback. I mean, it was a day where, one bad thing had happened after another, after another, after another. And, fortunately, there was no real serious injuries, whether it be to me or the people I interacted with, or, the people who were living in the housing development. But there was just, problems that we had to handle, me and the police officers that I was working with. And I was getting kind of down by the end of my shift. And this one elderly woman, grandmotherly, she just came right up to me and she just said to me flat out, "Thank you for being here."
Mm-hmm.
And then, that kind of goes back to the questions that I answered before. That made my day. That turned my whole shift around. And like I said, that really, really made my. I mean, here it is. I mean, I'm retired 10 years. That happened. I probably had maybe 10 or 12 years on the job when that happened, and it stands out in my mind as, both a sad day and a happy day in the end, because of what I was dealing with, and then her just being so appreciative that not only myself but the other police officers that I worked with were there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. How do you feel and react when you hear the phrase defund the police and abolish the police?
Yeah, that's a tough one. You know, nobody wants to be told what to do.
Mm-hmm.
That's the reality. You know, kids don't want to be told, clean your room, do your homework, and nobody, whether they're kids or adults, want to be told, you can't go here, you can't do this, or, if you're, pulled over for a traffic stop, now right away, even though the individual theoretically was wrong for whatever violation that they happen to uh, cause the reason to be pulled over, right away their guard goes up. And, right away, they don't like to be told, you know, what they did was wrong, or
Mm-hmm.
anything along those lines. So that in and of itself creates this barrier where now people, somebody says defund the police, and now people jump on the bandwagon because everything we do impacts what somebody else does.
Mm-hmm.
You can't drive through a red light. Why?
Yeah.
Because doing that is going to impact somebody else who has the green.
Exactly.
So, and that's just an example, but that's the way things are. And what's very interesting, you see now in Portland, all that happened over the summer, and they had their safe zone, and they had their autonomous zones. And now here we are, 2021, and the mayor of Portland is already admitting now that he handled it wrong.
Mm-hmm.
If you read in the news, if you watch the news, you'll see he's already saying that he's going to get tough on Antifa now. But why didn't he get tough with them before? And get tough on somebody doesn't mean you abuse them. That just means you set the rules. People have to abide by the rules, and there has to be some sort of enforcement of those rules.
Yeah. I always say when I hear people saying like defund the police or abolish the police, I think to myself, if their grandma falls down the stairs, who are they calling?
That's
You
exactly
know what
right.
I mean? Like they're calling 911.
That's exactly right.
So, yeah.
And I can tell you, as a matter of fact, police have interactions with certain aspects of society more than others.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And if you call the police, 20 times over the course of, a 20-year period, that's a lot.
Mm-hmm.
But there are people who call the police 20 times in 1 year,
Mm-hmm.
But yet these are the same people that want to defund the police. They want to get rid of the police. But
Mm-hmm.
yet they are the reason, the police are being called, why 911 is being utilized, both by them and against them by the people, who they're interacting with on that end.
Mm-hmm.
You're absolutely right in your analysis.
Yeah. Okay, is there anything you would want to communicate to people with all the tension between civilians and police officers nowadays?
I mean, look, cops are there to do a job. Okay. Their number one job, and this is what people have to understand. The most important job of a police officer every single day is to sign out at the end of shift and go home to their family. Okay. They have spouses, whether it's a husband or a wife. They have children, brothers, sisters, mothers, fathers, dear friends, loved ones. And the most important thing that cop does every day is to sign out at the end of his shift and go home to his family.
Mm-hmm.
People have to understand that. They really do. It's easy to Monday morning quarterback the cop, and sometimes, look, it's a fact. Sometimes the cop is wrong. They're human, like everybody else. But the vast majority of times, they're not wrong. And there's a lot of times when they're presented as being wrong and they're actually in the right. But the narrative is to push that they're wrong.
Yeah.
So that's probably as far as that is.